We are grateful to the Ganasehagwa who continue to care for this land and to the land itself for the ways in which it nurtures Black resistance while fostering decolonial solidarities. We invite you to reflect on what has brought you to care for this land and in the ways you may care for it. Take a few breaths as you feel through your relationship with this place. Now, welcome to Black Conversations, to Conversations Noires, the wellness reunion and experience-based series that highlights well-being, family bonding, emotional healing, and community empowerment. With events unfolding every Sunday of the month from noon to 6 p.m. These events include panels, workshops, and conversations that aim to uplift our community during Self-Care Sundays. The Roundtable on Black History Month is bringing free experiences online for all to join. The Wellness Reunion is presented by TD Ready Commitment and produced by Never Was Average in collaboration with FI. Now mark your calendars and join us Sunday, the 28th, as we discuss holistic health, spiritual practices, and wellness journeys with keynote speaker Leila Dahlia, wellness educator and author of Vibrate Higher. Today, and every self-care Sunday is rooted in our experiences as Afro-descendant people living in Quebec and inspired by the Black Panthers who popularized the event or the concept of self-care in 1970s. And today's particular focus is emotional healing. We are healing now. Mental health is a difficult and uncomfortable subject to discuss for a lot of people, especially for those diagnosed with mental illness. It is still one of the most stigmatized subjects in our society. And it's time to normalize talking about mental health. The purpose of this panel is to destigmatize mental illness and to keep the conversation going. I have a disclaimer before I introduce our panel today. This panel reflects the views of the presenters and has been made available for educational and informational purposes only and not as professional advice. Ce panel reflète les points de vue des présentateurs et a été mis en disposition à des fins éducatives et informatives uniquement et non en tant que conseil professionnel. Welcome to We Healing Now. My name is Petrona Joseph, blogger, author, and mental health advocate. I suffer with depression and anxiety, and I have been healing for 8 years. I've been on medication for 5, taking 2 breaks with my most recent as of November. I still suffer with panic attacks and depressions, but this time around, I am more manageable and my depression itself is more manageable and I am healing every day. And now for our panelists. You guys are going to love them. So we have Jay Jean-Paul, the owner of Bully by Nature Inc. Training Centers, personal trainer, father, and mental health advocate. His purpose came after being incarcerated for a short while, And his goal is to help young men and women build resilience through fitness and positive affirmations through vulnerable and transparent conversations. Bonjour, Jay. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Nous avons aussi Kimberly Hyacinthe, a sprinter who represented Canada at multiple world championships in track and field. She's the first Canadian woman ever to win in an individual event at track and field at the World University Games. In addition to winning a bronze medal at the 2015 Pan American Games, she was a part of the team that set a new Canadian record and qualified Canada to the 2016 Rio Games. Kimberly is also a motivational speaker. Bonjour Kim, ça va?
Oui, ça va, merci.
Parfait. Enchanté. Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining. Nous avons aussi Alexander McKenzie. Him, he, lui is a sexologist having completed his studies at UCAM, offering both individual and couples counseling via private practice, as well as through options sexology. Alexander gained the majority of his experience working at RIZO, a community organization for gay and bisexual men, cis and transgender, as well as being a part of Dr. Cecile Tremblay's team at CHUM, where he was responsible for research initiatives such as Purger et Protéger. As an Anglophone gay Black man living in Quebec, he thanks his experience and today is a trainer, conférencier, group animator, and counselor. Welcome, Alexander. Bonjour.
Hello, good morning. Bonjour, hi.
Good
I'm
morning.
happy to be here.
Hi. Such a pleasure. And just before I go into the interview questions, I would like to give a disclaimer and a trigger warning to our audience. Subjects such as suicide, medication, prison, and guns will be discussed. And now let's move right into our discussion. So I have the questions. This is very new to me doing, hosting an event by Zoom. This is really new to all of us. We're all located all over Montreal and Toronto. So I will be asking the questions, and the first to respond can carry on the conversation. And if you wanted to join or add, please feel free to. So my first question is, when was the first moment you realized that you were struggling with mental health? Who wants to start on this discussion?
I'll go.
Okay, so I'll start. Okay. I was going to break the ice. Go ahead, Jay. Yes.
Okay, so basically, the first moment I realized I was struggling with mental health is, for some people, it would be a moment where it's too late. I was incarcerated. I was 21 years old, and it was the fact that I was stripped away from my freedom and my notion of time that I realized that I put myself 6 feet deep. And that's when I realized I had a serious mental issue. So, yeah, that's basically it.
So that moment was your aha moment, which triggered, I have a mental health issue.
Yeah, because I think for a lot of people with mental health issues is that you're living in your own reality. So no matter what the outside parties tell you, it doesn't really resonate with your reality, right? So the way I was living my life, the way I was seeing things, my perspective, I always thought that I was 100% right. Like, example, someone with mental health issues will probably say, I'm alone. I have nobody. No one's there for me. But funny thing is, when I was shackled up from my ankles and my wrist, and I'm looking in the courtroom, I see I have my mom, my girlfriend at the time, my boys, and I realized I wasn't alone. It's just I created this reality, and it just made so much sense. And I think that's where the illness is sometimes. So at that moment, it's like I started realizing I was in the bullpen, and I started realizing, was I really alone? Or was I just so deep in my wounds that it felt I had some sense of comfort in my pain that I didn't realize I was actually surrounded by love, people that love me, or I had an opportunity to succeed or to do better. So I think it's when you hit a hard wall that you can realize. But some people, they just keep tumbling and tumbling and tumbling, and they don't realize, unfortunately. And I think that's where the illness is really, it has taken over, basically.
Mhm. Well, thank you for sharing. Kim and Alexander, who wants to go first? You could also share your experience with mental illness as well.
Do you want? Okay,
Kim,
I'll go.
I see you want to say something. Go ahead.
So I wasn't sure if you wanted to go. So when I realized the first time that I actually had uh, issues, basically, my partner passed away, and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't train. Well, I could train, but I was like half of myself. And I'm usually like a upbeat, always laughing, dancing around person, and there was none of that for months. So I talked to friends and my coach and my training partners and realized that I really needed help, at least for the sleep part. And also I started having panic attacks, like random panic attacks that I've never had prior to grief or anything. So I talked to a doctor, and I went on anxiety pills and sleeping pills as well. So for a couple months. So basically, like, just seeing myself not being myself really made me realize that I needed a little bit of help.
Okay. Kim, now we spoke prior to today, and you did give permission as to how deep we can go. Now, as we're discussing it, I'm getting goosebumps because I'm so, like, in awe of your trajectory to be the way you are today. But do you want to share with the audience how your partner
Yeah.
deceased? Okay.
So,
Sorry, that's actually triggering for me. So I didn't want to trigger
no.
anyone else.
So he took his life in the summer while I was away at a competition outside of the country. So that's basically how he passed away. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. And Alexander, although we had a conversation prior to today, you explained how it was growing up for you having to see someone that was very close to you experience mental illness. But at the time, because we're from a Caribbean background, it wasn't spoken about in the home. Did you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. At first, I was letting the others speak up, talk about their truths, because I have to admit I'm coming from a perspective where I've never been diagnosed with any sort of mental illness or mental health issue. That's not to say I'm not cognizant or don't recognize that, of course, I can have, there are periods of time where it's more difficult for me, but I can't say I have that personal experience. So I didn't want to kind of talk about it for other people who actually do have that experience. I'm definitely, because of my work, trained to understand mental health from a more professional and academic perspective and have that empathy. No, I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't prescribe medication or I don't necessarily diagnose anyone, but I am trained to recognize and be more sensitive to these things. And it's with that education where I recognized or I realized growing up that first of all, mental health is not something that we discuss very much in Afro-Caribbean, West Indian, Black communities, whether it be Francophone or Anglophone. And it was realizing that, like, you know, even something as growing up and seeing that, you know, my father working every day to pay the bills and put food on the table and everything, and my mom who gave all her effort and time to, you know, raising me and my brother, stay at home mom, making sure that everything was good, and just realizing when I'm older that, you know, there were times where, you know, she'd say that she's tired, or that she'd, you know, be taking lots of naps. And back then, I just remember my dad being completely like, it's not that he didn't lack empathy, but didn't necessarily understand. He's like, I'm working so that way we can have a good life. You know, you just got to clean the house, make food, watch over the kids. And she did that. But he didn't necessarily understand why she would be tired or why she was feeling down. And in retrospect, I realized, perhaps there was some issues of periods of depression that was there, and something that just wasn't necessarily recognized. I say now, my mom is great. She's thriving. She's happy. But it doesn't mean that these were things that were ignored back then, and necessarily, well, specifically ignored because there was a lack of understanding what even any sort of mental health issue or the notion of it could mean in a Black Afro-Caribbean family like my own. Just to be clear, I'm half Vincentian, so my dad's from St. Vincent, and my mom is mixed, half Haitian, half Quebecois. So yeah, there was a lot of lack of that understanding. And then also with my own experience, I remember there was one time when I was 8 years old, and it was just a regular day. We're getting ready to go to school, and all of a sudden I couldn't breathe. And I was essentially, my mom thought I was having an asthma attack. So she brought me to the hospital. And for that one day, I was hospitalized until like things came back down. The doctors explained I was having a panic attack. We didn't know what that meant. It was just apparently something must have triggered me that day. But what in the world could an 8-year-old be panicking about or have anxiety about? And it's like back then, I just knew that, and life went on as normal. I never was sent to see any doctors for it or for it to be taken care of. And I hold no grudges or any ill feelings about it. But it's like with retrospect now, looking back on that, had we a different perception of what mental health was in our community, maybe it might have been looked into a little bit more differently. And yeah, I'll stop there for now.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And as someone who is no longer on her medication, for the last 2 days, I have been catatonic. It's not as severe as it used to be, but I just know that within my family, everyone was calling me like, Petrona, what's wrong with you? I'm Trinidadian, by the way. So my granny is calling me, what's wrong with you? My uncle's calling me, you have COVID. My father's calling me, and I'm like, no, I am just depressed. So naps are essential for people that suffer with depression. It's our way of re-energizing our bodies, but also if we go against that, it could be definitely detrimental. With antidepressants, for anyone who's been on antidepressants, antidepressant gives you that extra oomph to get up. When I first started taking antidepressants, I couldn't believe that life could be like that because I had always suffered with the ups and downs. So I do concur with your mom taking naps because that's something that I've been doing all my life. Now, the second question. When you realize that you had to deal with mental health or you had a mental health issue, when you went to get help with a professional or, sought out a professional, did you feel stigmatized? For example, the first psychologist I saw laughed at me, basically. And I ran out of the office crying. I paid the $75 and I was like, that's it. That was so traumatizing. And I did feel stigmatized being a Black woman, having to deal with, someone not from my community, privileged. She just didn't get me, and it took me. I would say maybe 5 to 6 to 7 counselors in order for me to really be settled with someone. So, did you, Jay? I know with your story, you were incarcerated, and then you left the prison system. What was your trajectory? Did the system send you to see a psychologist?
Well, basically, the only way I could be released and get a second chance it's if my mom actually paid for rehab. So it was, I think at the time it was like 25K, 30K or something. She's actually still in debt for that. And
Ooh.
I had to go to rehab. So it was for marijuana and alcohol abuse. And honestly, when I walked in there, there was not one black kid. I was the only black kid. So
Mm.
just when you think about the price, 25K, it's a lot of money. So
Mhm.
obviously, I saw a lot of privileged kids, a lot of people that were doing harder drugs, more expensive drugs. And at first, I would say because the whole situation that happened, so I tried to kill myself with a 22. That's why I have it tattooed. I don't know if you guys could see it, but I put a 22 to my head, and that night someone saved me and actually caught the bullet for me. So I got a second chance, and then when I went there, it was so traumatizing what happened, and I felt so guilty that anything that was said from the therapist, I would just run with it. But then after that, till this day, I'm 28 right now. That happened when I was 21, and I'm still looking for a therapist. I even went to black therapists, and I've been around, and it's just sometimes it's just hard for someone to understand the upbringing of like I'm Haitian, right? So to understand the upbringing of someone that's always been taught to keep your emotions inside, don't let people know what's going on in the home, uh, keep everything on the low. So it's still a battle. It's still a battle to find someone to understand you and to find someone that could actually help you with the inner healing. Um,
Mm.
but I never stopped trying, right? Because I do believe in finding help, and I do believe in finding the answers through somebody else's perspective. But yeah, it was really hard, and it was it was how can I say, it was overwhelming also because like you said, they come from a privileged background, and sometimes I walk into a room and I have tattoos all over my face, all over my body, so sometimes it's
Mhm.
hard to take my story seriously, right? But yeah,
Right.
it's a process.
Mm. And thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Kim, when you were triggered by the life event, which was particularly discovering the suicide of your partner, when you went to seek help, how did the health professions react towards you? Did you feel stigmatized at any point?
Um, I will say that I was very lucky because I come from the sports system, so I'm not in the public health system, I guess. So I just went to my sports doctor and I told her what I was experiencing, and she knew everything. And she was able to help me right away. And I did not feel stigmatized because I've been with this doctor for a long time. And yeah, she was very, she understood, and she didn't hesitate to help me and see what the courses of action would be. So I was very lucky in that sense that I had someone who was willing to help right away.
And how did your family react? Did they at any point stigmatize you for seeking professional help coming from a Black background?
Honestly, I don't remember actually talking to my family much about it. I've
Okay.
talked
Okay.
to a cousin that's closer to me, but never did I feel stigmatized. I'm very lucky to have like close family that is like that are very comprehensive.
Okay. Well, Alexander, you're from a Barbadian background. I'm from Trinidad. We know about green tea, right? So in the Caribbean, they tell you, you're depressed, drink some green tea, man, and go and sleep. Sorry for my tricky accent, but isn't that, aren't we familiar with that?
Yeah, I mean, well, yes, son. Actually, part Vincentian. St. Vincent's right next to Barbados, though.
Oh, then I am so sorry. I'm so
It's okay. It's
sorry.
okay. Don't worry about it.
We're one people.
We're all in the same boat together. But yeah, it's not the
Yes.
it's not the same view. It's not the it's either downplayed as something that can be easily fixed, or it's something that's straight up just ignored. Again, I would have to attribute I've accessed mental health help. So, for example, I've seen a therapist for years because, as far as I'm concerned, it's always a work in progress. Whether or not you suffer from a mental health illness or not, it's something that we can all benefit from. But I don't know if I would have that perspective if it wasn't for the fact that I studied in a field that promotes this way of being healthy. Again, if it's not something that was ever seen in my family, something that is helpful and not something you only do when things are horrible or wrong or very bad. Often you hear, "Oh, I'm not crazy. I don't know. I don't need to go see a therapist. Or I don't need counseling." It always comes to this notion of being crazy. What does that even mean? At the end of the day, we all have a little bit of crazy. We all are suffering from different
Yes, we
issues.
do.
So it's also a question of making sure that people recognize that mental health issues isn't just something to address when you're at your lowest low. Like the reason why a lot of times it only gets addressed at that point is because it's not something that's more normalized for us.
Exactly. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that. Now, on to our third question. Okay, so, the famous depression is a white people disease.
Oh Lord.
I am sorry to say it like that, but
But
that's
how many
what
times
I
have you heard
heard
it?
growing up. Okay. Only white people suffer with depression, So for example, for me, I was told, you're too soft. And I spoke about this the last time I spoke on mental health. So I was told you're too soft, you have to toughen up, man, toughen up. So I get anxiety crossing over bridges. And I was working in the South Shore, having lived on the island of Montreal. And driving to work, I would feel the sudden panic attacks. And I'm like, come on, man, you tripping or what? Come on, you could do this. And I would just drive my car over the bridge, suffer, because panic attacks, you have your peak at 10 minutes, suffer my peak panic attacks. I think I'm dying. I think the car is being driven over the bridge. I think that I'm dead. So crossing over the bridge, by the time I get to work, I'm sweaty. I'm like, oh my God. So I would kept speaking to, for example, my pastor, family, friends, and they're like, come on, man, you need to pray. So before going to work, just to get over that bridge, I would pray in tongues for an hour and a half. Same thing would happen. Oh, you're not spiritual enough. You're sinning. Where's the sin in your life? So then I would go home like, oh my God, am I sinning? Is that causing my panic attacks and my depression, And so that prevented me from getting help for a year until I had the worst panic attack. I was on the Champlain Bridge, the old bridge, not the new one, and I couldn't cross. And I had already started crossing. And I was there and I was like, I'm going to die. That's it. I'm just going to die. And the patrollers, they came up to me and they're like, hey, madame, bouge ta véhicule. Away, away, away. So then I had no choice. And I was holding up traffic at 8 a.m. on a Monday. So I
Oh,
don't know
damn.
how I drove that car over it. I said, God, if angels are real, please get me over that bridge. I called my boss as soon as I got over the bridge and I went straight to the hospital and I conceded. I needed medication, right? So, as we know, mental illness is not a white people disease. It affects people everywhere, all races. So, what were your experiences with that? Kim, I don't think, maybe not. You mentioned that there was, right? Yeah. And what about you, Jay?
Well, I
Did
wouldn't
you
say
ever
I
hear
had a
that
mental.
growing up?
Well, yeah, I heard that a lot of times. But like also being from the streets,
Who
it's
did you
like,
hear that from?
well, I used to be gang affiliated, so my parents, whoever, like
Oh,
my dad's he's a hard ass, and like growing up with the guys that didn't have a father or whatever, we had this idea that we need to be the strongest men and we don't cry and we don't fall in love or we don't. So it was already something. It was instilled in my mind at a young age that like going to see a therapist or meds or whatever is only for white people or for the little white boys or whatever. It's like we're thugs, we're hard, we don't bend, we don't fold type of thing. And it's like, yeah.
hmm. And Alexander, did you hear that growing up?
Yeah. As we like to say, white people problems or white people issues. It's
Mm.
sometimes I feel like it's kind of like this big generalization or a kind of a how can I put it, a kind of bitterness when it comes to that them coming from a place of privilege and needing these things, whereas us, regardless of not having these privileges, and still working hard to live our lives and have our freedoms and equalities that we have, that we don't need to fall back on that because it comes back to this idea or this notion of weakness, but it's not about that. I mean, we can perceive it one way, but there's also just the science behind it. It's a chemical imbalance in our brains. If there's something that's an issue there, but it's not something that we can see. So it's also just having that lack of that understanding. It's just something so. It's like Jay said. It's really instilled. It's ingrained in our cultures and in our families.
Mhm. And the reason why I brought that up is because that is sometimes one of the barriers that keeps people from seeking help, or that keeps us from taking our medication. We're perceived as failures. We're, oh no, we hear our families, we hear our parents or our culture in our head. You know what I mean? So for some people, again, it just takes them so much longer before getting help because of these stereotypes. All right. So now we're going to go dark. We're going to share our lowest lows. And the reason why we're going to share this is because our audience members listening right now, everyone is experiencing something different. Right. And as we know, during these times, we have no outlets for socialization. We've seen record high suicides, record high depression from teenagers to our elderly. By sharing our experience, we may be able to touch someone that is listening right now. And so I will leave the stage open and I will let any one of you start and discuss that.
I guess I could go first for once. Uh,
Okay, Kim, thank you.
um, I would say that I don't fully remember exactly like my lowest low, but the feeling that I could think of, um, I would say that I would just stay in bed in the dark for like the whole day, not eat, not do anything. Um, and also, if I were at practice, sometimes I couldn't let my phone go because I always thought that something was going to happen. And I had to have, like, I needed to know, like, I needed to be reachable all the time, even though I didn't need to. I just always had a sense of like something's gonna happen, or if somebody was texting me, I just be like, oh my gosh, why is it? What is it for? Like, did somebody else die? So it was a lot of like um, just sleeping a lot and not wanting to take part in anything.
So, hindsight, seeing yourself in the past in that low, low moment and seeing yourself today, what would you have told yourself in that moment? In your room, laying in the dark, hopeless, what would you have wanted your spirit to tell yourself?
Um, I'm not quite sure, but maybe it actually gets better. It sounds so cliche and but time and just working on little things at the time actually helps, and you'll get out of there at some point. But you can't really see
Beautiful.
when you're in the midst of it.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you for sharing that, Kim. Thank you. Les gars, qui veut partir, qui veut aller?
I'll go. um, I guess
No
my
pressure.
no, it's all good. My
Mhm.
lowest low I really dealt a long time with substance abuse, and like not like him, like the whole sleeping thing or whatever. I was up all day. I actually lack sleep. Like I don't really sleep that much, and I would just smoke and smoke over 7 grams a day. So easily an ounce in 28 grams of marijuana in like 3 to 4 days easily. So I would just numb the pain and numb the pain and numb the pain. And then it was pills. So ecstasy, mollies, and then it's alcohol. And even recently I've dealt with substance abuse and I had to get out of it. So it's like my lowest low is always turning to a substance and trying to just numb the pain and numb the feelings and not feel anything or think of anything. So when you're high, you're not thinking, you're not even in the present moment. So instead of sleeping and not being in the present moment by sleeping, I would just induce myself as much as I can. And what I wished I could have told myself before is that obviously when I go back in 2013, I wasn't as physically active as I am today. And I wasn't the person, the fitness professional that I am today. So I wish I knew about fitness the way I know about it today. And I wish I knew about cold showers and meditation and all these good things. But you know what? When you're young and I could say dumb, you don't think about alternatives. You don't think about having any hope. You don't have faith, basically. Especially when you're in a dark, low point. Having faith is the hardest thing. So I just wish my soul could have told me that having hope and faith is something that you could tap into easily and get out of it. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Alexandre, il
Uh,
reste que toi?
yeah. If I had to think of one, I mean, period, it was hearing what Kim had to say about being in bed and being there in the dark and not having any desire to do anything is like, I, I hadn't really considered it, but I've had a situation like that too, where it was dark, it was not a good time. It was in relation to, the end of a relationship, and also some big life changes. And it took a friend to kind of reflect to me that, like, hey, you're not doing so well right now. And I hadn't even realized that, I was sleeping a lot, or that I would, like, wake up in the morning but not have any desire to get out of bed and keep the blinds drawn and that kind of thing. Again, I'm lucky that it didn't get any worse than that, but I think it's important to acknowledge and recognize that we do have periods like that, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we're weaker or anything, but it means that, you know, um, we're at a place where perhaps we might need some extra help, and that's one of the moments where I reached out and to my mental health professional.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And thank you for sharing that. I'm also going to be transparent and let you guys know that I had one of my most darkest moments this week. I woke up and I couldn't get out of bed. I said, I haven't done anything accomplishable in my life. And all of these things I kept going over and over in my head. Society's views of what a woman should be. I'm like, I'm not in that box. And I just had the worst moment. I felt so hopeless. And then thinking about COVID, I was like, are we ever going to get out of this? Because I was used to going out, being busy. But now I'm not as busy. It's just me, myself, and I, and my four walls. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I stayed in bed until 4 p.m. But one of the things that helped me that is really not traditional is sage. So I know by saging, it helps to remove dark energies, but also it helps to clear the energy. It helps to clear the room. So just for anyone who sages, if you sage and you hold your sage upwards, and the fire or the smoke goes to the left or goes to the right, those are indicators. But if the sage smoke goes straight up into the room, it means that the energy is clear. So I was still cognizant enough to know that, okay, I need to do something because my family is losing it. People are thinking, okay, should we call for a welfare check? And I was just having a dark moment related to our current lives, right? The way we're living. So I saged, I put on some gospel music, and I just closed my eyes. And even though the bad thoughts were coming a mile a minute, I was still able to think of stories and to think of people who have come through. And I think that that's why it is imperative that we share our dark moments, because one of the things that we all mentioned is hope and faith. So, to anyone listening in the audience that is having a hard time, a hard moment, feeling disconnected due to COVID, know that there is hope. And please have faith that things will get better. Okay, so moving into our sixth question. Medication. And I'm laughing because I love medication. It helps me so much, but I gained so much weight. I become obese and I'm still struggling. You could see my fupa right here. Medication makes you eat. So I when we first started the pandemic, I mean the money I was spending with Uber Eats, and so I decided, you know what? In order to maintain my weight, I'm gonna take a little break. So is anyone on our panel taking medication or has taken medication?
Nope.
Kim, Kimberly, you wanna please?
I did take medication for the anxiety, and I guess sleeping pills are not really well, they're medication, but I for a couple months, just to get me through just normal days actually. So I took it for a couple months, and then after that, I was able to just come back to normal. A little
So
bit
Kim, to clarify, you took antidepressants
No,
and a sleeping aid.
it wasn't antidepressants. It was, I can't remember.
An anxiogène.
Panic attack and
It was like, I think it was just for anti-anxiety. I'm not, it wasn't antidepressant. It was, I don't remember the name of it, honestly.
the reason why I asked you is because to destigmatize antidepressants, antidepressants is also used to manage panic disorders.
Honestly, it could have been. I'm not entirely sure.
So you're saying it helped you?
Yes, it definitely did help. It took a couple weeks to start working, but it did help my mood. I was laughing a little bit more, but it did help my mood. It lightened, like it didn't feel as dark anymore. And I was able to like basically function throughout the days.
Thank you for sharing.
On my end,
Jay, I know you've never taken medication, correct?
Sorry, me?
Jay? T'as jamais pris des
Yeah, no, I
médicaments
never took it.
la
Jamais,
dépression?
jamais, jamais.
OK. Parfait. Alors, je vais laisser le plateforme pour Alexander. Est-ce que tu as déjà pris des médicaments? Did you ever take medication?
Yeah, but not for mental health reasons. My experience with antidepressants is a bit different. So there's a medication called Elavil, which back 10 to 20 years ago was more used specifically for helping to treat depression and anxiety. But they also saw that it has an effect on helping people with chronic migraines. In my time, in university, I was in the cheerleading team, so athletic cheerleading. The last 4 years, I've been playing rugby. I'm part of a rugby team here in Montreal. Shout out to my team, Montréal, Armada Montréal. But unfortunately, because of these sports, I've been concussed multiple times. And concussions, unfortunately, at this point, the more you have concussions, the worse it gets. And I'm at a point where I now have something called post-concussion syndrome, which means that at any moment in time where if I am in a period of high stress, high anxiety, high physical exertion, lack of sleep, anything, symptoms may just come on, even though there wasn't necessarily a impact to my head or anything of the sort. And one of those symptoms is also migraines. So I have chronic migraines that can come on at any time. This Elavil medication, they saw that apart from treating anxiety and depression, it also helps with migraines. So now these days, since antidepressants, they've evolved in the world of pharmaceuticals and whatnot, they've moved on to other things, but they still prescribe Elavil for migraines. And my whole reflection around that also, speaking with my doctors, was learning that people, even if they're suffering from migraines and this can help, they'll refuse to take it simply because of its association with being an antidepressant and all the stigma that's around that. So am I taking it for that? No. Does it help lower my anxiety and help me sleep? Perhaps. But what's really surprising is that people will refuse to take something that can help them simply because of what it's associated with.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. For me to be transparent, I was on Zoloft for 5 years, and then I switched over to Trincolex to help me with weight management. Zoloft, you have to be careful when you're going on to antidepressants or when your doctor prescribes you an antidepressant. To anyone listening in our audience, antidepressant has a scale of weight gain, because then it's really counterproductive, right? If you gain weight, then you're going to look at yourself one day and then you're going to be like, oh no, I don't recognize myself. And then you're dealing with something else. So what I would suggest that you do is that you ask your doctors to prescribe antidepressants anywhere between a +1 to a +2. That is minimal weight gain. It took me a long time to figure that out. Zoloft and a lot of the generic antidepressants have a +4 weight gain. So that's my advice with antidepressants. All right. So what are we currently doing to maintain our mental health during our current world or societal situations and curfew and restrictions?
I can start first this time. For me, what I do is every day I meditate when I wake up in the morning. And meditation can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. I personally come at it from a mindfulness perspective, but just taking that moment in time to center myself, think about what it is that I need to do, what I want to get done, what are the reasons why I'm doing this. I want to be a better counselor for my clients. I want to be a better person for the people in my life. And I want to be centered myself. I'm my greatest tool in my work, so I need to make sure that I'm good. So meditation is an important part. Physical activity, people downplay just how important exercise and physical activity is. And exercise, I mean everything from going to the gym and pushing weights to taking a walk outside. Ever since this lockdown has happened, or this whole COVID pandemic situation happened, I've made it a point to go outside and walk every day, because now working from home, it's easy to lose track of the time and what day it is, and everything's starting to blend together. So, and I realized that just taking the time to go outside for a walk, whether it be 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour or more, all of a sudden my brain realizes, oh, it associates that day with this, and that like things have more of a structure once again. Not to mention just moving. It has a great impact on just, how our brain chemistry works, giving us everything that we need, whether it be from serotonin to whatever else, to just feel good about ourselves. So meditation, exercise, any form of exercise, just get up and move, people. And reaching out to mental health professionals when you need it, or even when you don't need it. It's always best, the best time you can get work done, personal work done, is when you're in a good place. So making sure that, and what that applies to both physically as well as psychologically. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. So meditation and exercise and reach out.
Mm-hmm.
Kim and Jay, qu'est-ce que vous faites pendant ces temps un peu difficiles?
But for me, it's been a lot of, I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I can still train. We have specific exemptions for high performance athletes. So that helps a lot. But in the first lockdown, when we're stuck in our houses, even if it was cold, I made sure that I had like 2 friends that didn't go out and do other things. And we just started training parks, running around. When I wasn't with them, I would just make sure that I go for walks like Alexander. And also, I found that it was so easy to just get into like the social media world where people were like, "Oh, I'm making bread. I'm making this. I'm
Right.
so productive," and I was just like, I'm not doing anything. Like, what's happening? So it was very important for me to ground myself back and be like, I don't need to be doing anything if that's not something that I want to do. Why would I try to force myself to learn Excel? Why would I force myself to learn something that I'm not really into just because I don't like now I have the time. So grounding yourself into like knowing what you want to do and what you actually like to do, and not shaming myself for no reason. Like if I didn't want to do it, watching Netflix a whole 3 days in a row, it's fine. Like
Right.
it's not gonna kill you, and it's fine to do it. And eating whatever I wanted, even though like I did gain the weight, but I was happier. I didn't mind. And yeah, just grounding myself. I tried to meditate here and there. I'm not a super social person, but I would call my friends on FaceTime. I started doing puzzles that I don't even do.
It's so cute.
It made me like not happy, but it's soothing to do something that's like just mechanical and like you have to find things. But yeah, just trying to upgrade myself. But also, if I don't want to do anything, I just don't do it. It's not the end of the world if you're not doing anything.
Yes, and that's important. Another thing that helps a lot of people during this time is limiting their social media use.
Yeah.
And seeing, people that are traveling that shouldn't really be traveling, according to my point of view. People that are baking bread, that are starting new businesses, that are boasting, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It really does put a strain on some of us that just want to, like Kim said, watch Netflix and just relax. And, just because we're all going through a global pandemic and global trauma, which we all feel in our bodies, and we all have different reactions to it.
May I just add to that a quick thing?
Yes.
Yeah, well, when it comes to social media, we also have to keep in mind people are only putting forward their very best, right? They're not showing their lows necessarily. They're showing only what looks good. So we kind of have to keep that relative and keep in mind that, we're seeing a highly curated aspect of people's lives and not necessarily the whole truth, which is why it's important not necessarily to compare to others, but compare to ourselves and concentrate on what it is that what do we enjoy? What are our hobbies? Go into that, but not necessarily think that we're not doing enough because we're only seeing this highly curated version up on social media.
Mm-hmm. Can I get a finger snap? And Jay, what are you doing? I mean, I see you on social media and I love your feed because you're fathering your daughter, you're working out, you're giving me that I can do it. Get out of your bed, Petrona. Go work out. So I love the vibe. Thank you for keeping them high and balanced on social media. So what are you doing?
Thank you.
Yourself balance.
Honestly, it's the first lockdown where we couldn't go out or anything. I was living alone in my condo in Mirabel, so I was off the island, super far from everyone. It was really hard. It was really, really hard. But that dark time actually, well, I always say COVID is a blessing because it triggered and brought out a lot of things that we weren't aware of because everything was on pause. I couldn't repress my emotions with work. I couldn't throw things under the rug with the gyms. It was really like, okay, I'm alone. I need to deal with a lot of things. And what it triggered in my mind is it made me realize that I had to get more in tune with my family aspect. So now this time around, during COVID, during this pandemic, I'm very in tune with my daughter. I see my daughter all the time. She was actually born during the pandemic. So she actually brought a lot of people when she came to the world. She brought a lot of like family members that I haven't spoken to in like 8 years, or like people that I had cut off because of resentment or whatever. And what keeps me grounded now is just checking in with those people and setting up visits with my daughter and just like having these people around, being with my girlfriend, just really being with family and checking in on family is what's keeping me going right now during the pandemic. So yeah.
It's
It was
beautiful.
a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Oof, you're sure right. You're sure right. What I've been starting to do is because I started going to a dark place. I mean, we're 1 year into it. And so for this time around of the year, it's galas for me. It's organizing big events with my friends. I love life. Okay. So I started becoming ungrateful and nitpicking because I'm always home, you know? So you start nitpicking at your life, and then you start thinking, oh, that friend, she really sucks. And then you're like, oh, my dad, I remember when my dad did that. So to help me recenter and to start being grateful again, I started journaling. So within 10 minutes, I mean, my days are so like up and down. I couldn't even tell you if I had a routine. I wanted to stick to the wake up, exercise, and then sit at the computer for work, but I couldn't do it. So one of the things that's currently helping me is writing 10 things that I appreciate. And on my list today was definitely being here, meeting you guys, having this great discussion, meeting Hannah, her team, Gracia, Henry, Nedley, and a few faces that I don't know, but I am so grateful. And I think gratefulness, trying to keep connections to those that we know via Zoom, puzzles, exercise. I think these are great tools for us to get through the next 12 months. And that sums up our beautiful panel. And my name is Petrona Joseph. You could find me at I am Petrona Joseph. I read my DMs. So if anyone in our audience struggling with mental health, you want someone very objective to talk to, feel free to reach out to me. And at this point, I'd like to open up the floor to our audience members. I'm having an Oprah moment. I feel like Oprah. I'm opening the floor to our audience. Yeah. Okay. So do we have any audience members that want to ask any questions or share? No one? Come on, guys. Des questions. From Jordan Savary. Thank you for speaking about medication. You're welcome, Jordan. Thank you. D'autres personnes? Non, c'est tout. Alors, je vous remercie encore une fois. J. John Paul, you can find him, if I'm not mistaken, off memory, at Southwest Bully.
Yeah, Southwest.bully.
You want to tell the audience members where they could find out?
You can find me at southwest.bully or at bullybynature.inc.
Thank you very much. Alexander, I find you very interesting because you don't have Instagram.
Yeah, no, I don't use it. That's more of a personal choice. Mostly because of I recognize also how Instagram can also be a little bit, well, that whole perspective of, being on a feed and just seeing like what everyone else is doing, and it's always super positive, and all that whole thirst trap notion as well. Something that's very prevalent. I mean, it's prevalent in the straight community. It was very prevalent in the gay male community as well, with unrealistic body image standards and whatnot. So I was just like, well, I hear all my friends talking about how they wish they didn't have an Instagram account, as well as clients as well. So I'm like, well, I don't have one to begin with, so I guess I just will leave it that way. But I do have a professional Facebook page, which is just simply Alexander McKenzie, as my name is spelled here, sexologist. And you can find me there, or just Google me, and you can find me at any of the offices, the clinics where I rent offices to practice. Right now, I'm only working from home, strictly teleconsultation. But yes, I'm easy enough to find.
Perfect. Thank you. Kim, say Kim Hyacinthe on Instagram, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, it's the same that's written down there, Kim Hyacinthe or Kim Hyacinthe, whichever.
Great marketing, Kim. Perfect marketing. Very simple. I love it. Okay, so we have one last question before we no questions. Okay, perfect. All right, so you guys have a beautiful self-care Sunday. Ashe.
Thank you. Take care.
You're welcome.